Good morning everybody. Welcome to all of those who have braved the weather and to those who are sitting at home and watching online. Not many announcements. One of them is the questionnaire that Adrian has put together and is accepting. Thank you to those who have filled it in already and left it in the box or sent it online. Those of you who have done it here this morning, thank you very much. Those of you who have not done it, there are blank ones at the foyer. You could take them home and then post them, post the finished one back to the box number on your newsletter. Because we would like to get as many in as possible. It's your opportunity to say what you think about Rutherford, using polite language. This is the last lecture in the current series. And the next series, we're having a 2-week semester break, if you like. And then the next series is on science, and we're going to do everything from a visit to the heavens and to Antarctic. So a wide range of subjects. A little bit of the here and a little bit of the now and the future. The only other thing is the regular one, which is turn off your cell phones. Thank you very much, and I'll ask Paul to introduce our speaker.
Greetings, Grandma Adie, wherever you are, and for the rest of us, welcome Dame Adrian Stewart. She is here to come and support her grandson, Kane, and I'm going to say something about him in a moment. Last week we had Neil talk to us about his dream, his ambition, and that project has been going for about 4 years. Kane has also got a wonderful project, and he's going to tell us all about it. But it's still in its infancy, but nevertheless, it is something very exciting. He's also a board member at the Hub. We had Dame Sue Bradshaw talk to us a few meetings ago, and Kane contributes to the Hub there. Now, at the bottom of the home page of his website, it says, about the Egg Academy, which I'll tell you all about it, it's a community of young people creating the future. Now, just a few more lines and questions from Kane. He says here, are devices ruining the next generation? Screens have changed the way that young people conduct their lives. Why are they so compelled to devices? what is happening to their communication skills? Are we losing our sense of humanity? Kane is the founder of the Egg Academy, an education startup with a mission to disrupt the education system. Margaret Austin won't like that. The Egg Academy inspires teenagers 12 to 15 years old to be creators rather than consumers of the digital media. He previously designed online slot machines and video games and was also a high school teacher. I give you Kane Stewart.
Test, test. Can you hear me all right? Firstly, want to thank Paul for getting me up on stage and presenting with amongst other great speakers. I do want to say this before I begin, is that I need a little bit of a hand from you guys. I don't want my grandmother to have a panic attack out there. And I tend to use ums and ahs a fair bit and not realize I'm doing it. So if I do that, just give me a little wave so that I'm wary. That would save us all a lot of pain. There you go. It's a big question, this. Are we letting devices take away our humanity? It's a question that I think about quite a lot. With the invention of technology, particularly digital technologies and the internet moving things quite fast, I worry that our human roots are not keeping up as fast as that. And so as technology evolves so quickly, there's a bit of concern, are we really keeping pace? So next slide. I want to tell a little bit of a story of a grandma, not my grandmother, another grandma. She was feeling a little bit guilty having a 12-year-old daughter and not spending so much time connecting with her like they did when she was a bit younger. And she decided, I need to do something about this and spend a bit more time with my granddaughter. And so she asked Mum, her daughter, can I spend some time with Jazz? And Mum said, yeah, that would be great. She spends all the time on a device. I'd love her to get outside and out and about. And so Grandma had a great idea. She's like, let's take her around town, see all the new buildings that have cropped up. And so they did. They went on their trip, and it all started off really nicely, walking around town, seeing all the new buildings, getting the fresh air, having those conversations, really seeming like they were connecting with each other. And then they ended up at Riverside Market, sat down. Jazz looked at Grandma, said, I love you, Grandma. And Grandma said, oh. And Jazz said, can we get some ice cream? And so Grandma's like, oh, that's why you love me. And so she went to get the ice cream. You stay there, look after the seats. And she went away, got the ice cream, came back, and the mood had completely changed. Something had happened. And the device was out of the pocket and in Jazz's hands. And she was staring at it. And Grandma came with the ice cream. Hey, Jazz. No response. Hey, Jazz, I've got your ice cream. The slightest nudge of head. Thanks. And it just lands on a table there. And Grandma just sort of sat there in kind of like confusion. Why is this kid suddenly so glued to this device, hardly eating her ice cream when we were having such a great chat before? And she sort of tried to have a conversation, and Jazz said, 1 minute, please, Grandma. Look around the room, sort of sheepishly, like, how do I, get to talk to this young person? And that sort of continued on, and yes, Jazz put away the phone, but it wasn't quite the same anymore. Her mind was fixated somewhere else for the entirety of their journey until Grandma dropped her back home. Next slide. This kind of feeling of guilt remained. There was no connection with the daughter. She didn't know what to do. And question to you guys, who has ever felt annoyed or disgusted or something at this kind of scene? I heard someone say my wife. Yes, me too. And I want to, and with someone like myself who works with teenagers and works with digital technologies, I see this a lot, especially having gone to schools and working in schools in today's day. And it sort of worries me. And when I tell people I work with teenagers and kids, the number one response I get from parents mostly is, next slide. This is the number one problem, that it keeps coming back up and up and again. So how do I get my kid off the device? You know, mum's worried. She's worried that kid's not going to get socialized, and I don't know what's happening behind the world. And I want to tell you what it's like to be that kid, having grown up with being a gamer myself. So next slide. So I'm going to tell you a bit about myself and how it came to be. That was me when I was about 6 or 7, and I had big dreams at that age. Next slide. My dream was to have as much fun as possible, as many young people. And my cousin got me into this thing called video games at that age, and I was really, really into it. And so I was having a lot of success with my big dream. Next slide. Does anyone recognize this place? Anyone? Christ College, yeah, I heard it there. It was all going fine and dandy until I ended up at this place. It sort of was very traditional in a sense. And this is a photo taken from a long time ago, but it sort of felt the same to me. And I spent a lot of time, spending my time playing video games. And when I was at school, most of the people there were into rugby. They were farmers, sons of sons kind of thing. And I just couldn't really fit in. Sort of self-inflicted, bullied in my first few days, and just couldn't sort of associate myself, and all the confidence at that moment just like sort of goes away, and sort of I spent a lot of time spending my time kind of like a loner, playing a lot of video games. Now I wasn't a complete loner. I had a lot of friends online, but school wasn't the place, and the real world was not a place that I could feel confident in myself. And so I would spend a lot of time online. Next slide. But I did listen to what school sort of set me up to do, which was like, hey, if you do well at school, you're going to get the good grades, you'll get the good job. Get the good job, why? You get the good money. And why you want to get the good money? It's because so that we could have more fun, play more games, fun the process. And so I did do that. Did really well. Next slide. I went to this place. This is in Australia, in Melbourne. Went to Melbourne Uni. Did the course that I thought would be the safe option to get me the job that had a good payoff, which was accounting and finance. Sort of generic thing. Didn't really think about it all too much. Next slide. And that was my first day at work. That was my first day at Ernst & Young. I had a little internship there. Next slide. And continued to play video games in my time. So it was all going fine and dandy until, not so fast, my little friend. This is when things sort of didn't go according to my plan. Next slide. And I just remember within third day of my job, the partner brings out this massive stack of files and just plonks it on the desk. And I'm going, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? And, sort of had to trawl through telephone bills, laundry, car bills, all kinds of stuff. And I just, within 2 or 3 weeks, I knew this was just not the thing for me. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do, which is sort of crazy talk because I'd spent 4 years of my life previously studying this thing, and also 3 years in high school doing it too, to know within 1 month that it's not the thing, which leaves me a little bit of a sour taste about sort of the education system, and how was I supposed to know being a youth? Maybe I was just silly and naive, but next slide. And sort of compounding that problem, the video games that used to be fun started to become less and less fun, a bit more solo rather than social. Less and less of my friends were playing them, and sort of sent me down a spiral of, what am I doing with myself? Next slide. But with most things in life, it comes in waves and cycles, and so there was light at the end of the tunnel. And I was really fortunate enough to get my dream job. Has anyone seen this arcade machine? Yeah, it used to be in the city of town, by the BNZ building, and I worked at the company that made these things, and the company's name is called U3A Fix. They mainly make games for Disney, and it was the polar opposite of the accounting company. And when you walk in the doors, the wall's orange. There's a massive board game collection, Nerf guns, and lots of socially awkward people like I was. And so I was in heaven, right? And interestingly enough, I was at the factory that made the fun now. I was at the fun factory. I was chasing the fun my whole life, and now I was at the place that made them. And that really started to open my eyes to what was really out there. Knowing that before I was just chasing and consuming the fun, now we were at the place that made them, and surrounded by people that were not so much different from myself, and it gave me a whole lot of confidence, and gave me the confidence to now open my eyes and see the world around me. There you go. Next slide. And there's sort of two main lessons I picked up from working at this game company, and one of them was this thing, which is after a few months, I was tasked on the team to make one of those things, which are slot machines. I was tasked on the team to make slot machines, and no one at the company had done that before. We'd found a new way to market into this online market in America, and so there was a bit of an opportunity, and no one knew what these things were, so I had to do my research, and it turns out these things are through and through addiction machines. Everything about them is to get the player to be addicted to them. Starting with getting them to the device, so that's with all the bells and the whistles and selling the hope of a big win, a big jackpot. So get them to the device, and then once you get the user to the device, it's to get them to stay for as long as possible on that device. The main metric for success is time on device. And as I dug into it a bit more, it was clear that there were certain psychological manipulations or certain psychological hacks that were used to achieve this means. And a very important one is this one done in the 1930s by a psychologist called B.F. Skinner. Now, B.F. Skinner ran an experiment, like you see in the photo with the mouse there, and there was a lever that the mouse could press, and which would administer a food reward they were to eat. And he ran two experiments, one where it distributed the food in a uniform manner. So for every 4 presses, say, it would give a food reward, another 4, the food would come out, another 4 presses, the food would come out. And in the second experiment he ran, it was random. The inputs and the outputs were randomized. So 1 press, 3 press, 7 press, 2 press, 5 press. And what they found was in the second experiment, there was a whole much longer playtime for the mouse. There was this psychological hack that would get the mouse to play for longer. And it's the same thing that we see the slot machine use as its principle of design, to get the users to stay on longer. And why does this matter in today's age? Well, social media is using exactly the same principles to get people to stay on the device for longer. This is the next evolution of the slot machine. And rather than it being monetary rewards and lights and stuff, it's still lights, but it's lights showing pictures of your friends or the news or a funny video. It's basically socially fueled a slot machine in your pocket. So next slide. So essentially every kid has this in their pocket, right? Every kid has the socially fueled addiction machine in their pocket. And that's why so many people find it hard, not just kids, but a lot of people find it very hard to get off the device. It's because of this psychological trick. And unfortunately, it's very it's not very well understood, this principle, and it's a very useful means to escape. When we were designing the slot machines, the goal was to put people into the zone where they actually forget all their worries. They just completely zone out and forget even physical pain, to zone out to sort of match the algorithm. And so that's what happens with social media. That's why it's hard to turn it off at night, and why so many young people are addicted. Next slide. On a more positive note, the other thing I learned about when I worked at this game company was that these things, the same ones that got kids addicted to social media, also allow us to control the robots. People think that the robots are somewhat coming or something, but they're already here, and we can absolutely control them. When I take a film of myself, this film itself is capturing and going onto YouTube. It just takes one shot. So it could take me an hour to make a video, say, and then I upload it onto some sort of platform, and I could go to sleep, I could do my thing, and that platform will take my video, duplicate it lots and lots of times. Hopefully, if I do well, hundreds. If I do super well, thousands. Super well, hundreds of thousands of times for free while I sleep. I don't have to really do anything anymore. And so within our grasp is the power to control the robots, the robot armies that can do our bidding while we relax. And so particularly digital media, in the sense code, things that involve software, and media like shooting video, has this ability to allow you to really scale up. The computers will keep replicating and replicating your creation. So next slide. This is an example of that. Instagram only had 13 people when Facebook bought it for $1 billion. So the amount of people in the first 3 rows on this right side is the total number of people to create this brand, this software that a lot of people around the world know. It's sort of like this household thing that's sort of scaled up and affects so many people en masse, just 13 people. And so that's the power of the digital technologies. On the one hand, it's get people to addict them, but on the other hand, it has this huge ability to make impact. And Steve Jobs once described computers as the bicycle for the mind, that it's a tool that amplifies our innate human abilities. Just like a hammer is a tool, hammering something with your fist is really hard. If you get a hammer as a tool, it's a lot easier. And so the computers are like the bicycle for the mind. It allows your mind to go to another level. But just like any tool, tools can be used for good and they can be used for bad. Like for example, a rope, we can use it to pull things along, very useful, but it can also be used to, do that. So these tools are, they're just tools, and they can be used for all kinds of means. And so with this newfound knowledge, I was like, wow, why did I not know this when I was at school? And I gotta go share this, because everyone's on these things, right? And so I set off on my journey to become a teacher, because I thought that would be a good place to share what I learned. And I did, and I trained, and I just remember a conversation I had with my little sister. She was about 10 at the time, and as I was training, getting all excited about going into the classroom, I asked her, how do you like school? Or, are you excited about school? I asked her. And she said something so candid but truthful that I was like, wow. And what she said was, who does? And it struck me. I was like, oh, that really just had a moment. I was like, oh yeah, I remember what school was like. But I sort of kept at it and got into the classroom. Next slide. Now, this is my experience in school, and from what I observe now, it's a lot worse than you think. I won't delve into all the details. I don't think cell phones are helping, definitely not. But I use the anecdote. Imagine having 5 meetings in a day. You'd feel pretty tired if that was just business meetings. What if you had 5 meetings that you had to chair every single one with 25 people, but not just people, children, that all didn't want to be there? It's extremely difficult, and that's only half of the job, because after you're done with that, you've got to plan your lessons. So 6 hours of contact, and then you've got to plan for the next day. So that's on repeat, and that was, that to me is not necessarily a very sustainable model. Next slide. And you're sort of seeing, I can't help but see all these articles come up all the time. I might be biased because of my experiences, but I can't help but see constantly that there's problems happening at the school system. And I've witnessed that too, firsthand. New Zealand students record worse results in maths and science. Doesn't surprise me at all. Half of high school teachers quit within 5 years. Right. Yeah, I'm no longer teaching in high school, so I'm one of those figures. School truancy, look at that. Barely 60% of kids regularly attend class. This is particularly prevalent in New Zealand, I think, because there's not a lot of that societal pressure to really go super hard academically, unlike some other countries. But yeah, that kind of stat's a bit alarming. and homeschooling on the rise. I think there's a lot of factors at play, especially with devices and the internet and how people learn. And I don't think schools are really working at this point in time. Next slide. And it's not just teaching, right? It's not just, when you're a teacher, it's not just teaching. There's a lot of the social aspects of your job, which is very hard to do when you're managing 25 kids for an hour. It's hard to do all those other aspects. But what we're seeing is those other aspects are becoming a bigger problem, actually, a bigger barrier to the learning than is the knowledge transfer. And so, young adults, we hear it a lot of mental health from the young people, particularly bad in New Zealand, and social anxiety, like I experienced myself. Next slide. And that kind of doesn't sit well with me, actually. I haven't opened my eyes to the world. We have such a great standard of living. We really do. These are our whakapapa, our ancestors that they represent all the people that came before us. And their lives were a lot harder than they are today. They had to, firstly, we were middle of the food chain pyramid. So it was, that wouldn't have been a very easy life, hunter-gatherers. And then, we had to fight the plagues, we had to fight wars, we had to fight all these things to get to this standard that we are today, which is just incredibly good. We have homes, we have pillows, and most people have it pretty good compared to even the royalty 200 years ago. And so it really pains me that people are sort of young people are sitting there all mentally, fragile and socially anxious. It's man, if you could just see, and do something about it. Next slide. Yeah, so that's what we see a lot in the schools, huddled in the corner, device out, socially anxious. I see that a lot. But there's a lot of hope, because on the one end, the consumption's right there using the device. On the other end, it's this tool for creating and really using it for good. This slide here is sort of representing a young person escaping into the virtual world or the internet. Now, it's not all bad in there. It's actually very vast. The space in the internet is actually far vaster than what's in the physical realm. And I'll explain a bit more about that using a bit of a metaphor. Next slide. I liken the internet to ants. Ants can travel slightly differently to humans. Humans sort of are limited to operating on a 2D sort of surface, on the floor, whereas ants can go sort of 3D. They can go depth and out and around. And I liken the internet to traveling like ants, where we can now, through our phones, travel up into 3D space. We can really get out there. And an example of that would be, say you make a video phone call to someone in Singapore. Well, let's just take a tunnel all the way up into the atmosphere, tunnel all the way down to our family's phone that's located in Singapore. And so it's allowed us to do these amazing things when you really think about it, creating these portals between vast spaces, between time and space. And certain companies are really good at getting the ants to come towards their hive. And often, in the case of social media, they clip the ticket every time someone walks past the door, sell them advertising. And yeah, the other parallel I liken, and why I liken the internet to ants, is parents and our approach to try and solve this screen time problem with youth. A lot of parents try and take the approach of, let's try and shut the ants in and sort of enclose them somehow. And if you've ever tried to do that with ants, it's a very difficult thing to do because they always find a way out. An example of that be like, let's ban you from using your phone. You spend too much time on it. But the kid will, find a way to go to the library to use the computer, or they'll borrow their friends, or they'll join a different Wi-Fi service, or they'll convince them that school that we should have homework that's digital. It's very hard to keep them out of the internet, just because of how prevalent it is now and how we actually use it for our work. It's hard for parents because they use it for their work and then they're saying, don't use it, kids. So it's kind of an impossible paradox to solve. Part of the solution, we think we're onto something here, but a part of it would be, what if we could use the device for a bit more meaningful uses? And I want to share a bit of an example. There's this fella, and I just found him online, and he's such a cute little dude. He's basically running this young entrepreneurs program. What does he know about entrepreneurship, right? He's running it for 8 to 12-year-old, using his computer. His mum's pretty smart, obviously, to get him to try and sell this course to other kids to so-called earn better pocket money, which is just fascinating to me. And the kid is, funnily enough, not even 12 years old, so he's selling a course to people that that he hasn't even experienced themselves. But it's, from what I see, it's not even about the money. It's not about, earning at that age, even being successful. What it's really about is, if we go to the next slide, it's about learning these scalable skills that I talked about, using the robots. And why, there's a lot of misconception about the future of work. People might say, we don't know what's coming, there's lots of uncertainty, job market's going to completely change, but I think we do know what is important and what will be demanded by employers, or yourself if you're self-employed, is that these scalable skills are definitely going to be in demand. Why? Because if I can take one person and their output and replicate it using the robots hundreds of times, well, that's definitely going to be something that employers are going to look at and go, that's something I want. And so, yes, digital technologies and software and media are absolutely skills that employers are going to want. And so if we can give kids the understanding of how to make these things, there's definitely going to be a job for them at the end of the tunnel. The other thing I love telling kids, actually, I go to present at a lot of schools, and I talk about this thing, which is the remote revolution. And before I tell them about it, I ask them, how many of you guys want to travel? And every single time, almost uniformly, about 80% of the hands go up. 80% of the kids want to travel, which didn't really understand, but these guys are 12 and 13, and maybe COVID has something to do with it. But when I hear that, it gives me a lot of encouragement, because it's like, well, now they have something to strive for. and they could strive to be remote. Work via computer when you want, more or less, where you want. COVID has got everyone, many people, to work via a computer, so it's created this whole thing that's going on right now where young people are streaming out across the world, flying and just working via a computer. And why would you not? If you could get there, why not go via a computer, earn your keep, and also experience the world? Because that's pretty good education in itself. Next slide. And I tell them about my friends that are doing this. We run an Airbnb, and so we get a few of these people trickling through, even during COVID. The first one's Harmony. She does email marketing support. She's 23 from the States. And email marketing support's like call center, but for emails. So it's not even really a techie, digity tech type of job. It's just via a computer. And she stopped by for 3 months, loved her time here, but had to leave because her whole company was flying everyone, all the workers from all across the world, because they were all remote, all to Mexico to have a retreat, which was amazing for Harmony because she'd only met her colleagues online. And so she got flown out there, all paid, and she got to stay there because the cost of living is way cheaper and just continue her travels. So seems like a no-brainer, And James there, he creates new blockchains, which is an emerging technology. He's 20. He learned it by himself. He didn't need anyone to teach him. No formal education. He just sort of went online and started learning himself. And he earns $200K a year, and he does far less work than I did as a teacher. 25% of the workload, I would say. Which is just crazy because there's such a demand for these scalable skills. Next slide. And so I like to sort of keep giving them examples. Here's a Christchurch flat that you could live in, costs you about $200 a week. It's cold. You're not allowed to go out to restaurants because it's just too expensive. Or figure out your way to get a remote job. You can travel where you want. You could go to Bali. It's warm there. Stay by the beaches all day. You can eat out like a king or queen, and you get $70 a week in rent. So you get 30%, and you get cleaners. and so, for me at least, it seems like a no-brainer that young people should be pursuing these trajectories. And even if they don't do that for the long term, at least give themselves the opportunity to do that and fund their own next step out of school. And my final sort of message to young people is that it's actually quite simple, but hard to do in practice. It's to create rather than consume anything. Create any sort of digital technologies. You're using it anyway. And so I constantly reiterate that message. And that is the tenet that the Egg Academy is built on. That is our main thing. It's that when young people come to the Egg Academy, they learn and we get them to identify as creators, not as consumers. And the results are just phenomenal. I'll share a little bit about that. But what we really actually try and do is actually solve the problem there, which is the screen time problem. We're actually trying to solve the screen time problem. We're an online after school program. So we run our classes online. They join our community online. Yet we are out to solve the too much time on screen time problem. You might wonder, how could that possibly be the case? Or how do you possibly do that? But I do think it's possible. Next slide. That's me. And behind me is my business partner, Juniper. And I'm doing some guerrilla marketing. And so I've got a GoPro, a camera strapped to my forehead. And I'm going off, that's an egg, and I'm going off terrorizing the town in my egg suit. And this is a digital exercise. We are filming ourselves, and we're going to be putting that online, right? And we want to get views from that. And we show this to kids and they love it. And so, but the key is that we're using the digital, but we're enhancing our real life experiences using it. So we're actually getting into the real life. We're we're trying to role model to young people what it's like to hit the world. It's not such a scary place after all, you know, and it should be enhancing, the digital should be enhancing your real world experiences. Next slide. And we got them going, like they're on the mission. We made a video game with them. It's called Shipwrecked, and that's the main character in the top left corner. It's a rectangle, and so a couple of weekends ago we went with the crew. You know, we had to make a trailer for the game because we wanted to market it, and we had to go Morehouse Ave. You know, we were looking for a cardboard so that we could make a model of Greg, a real life model of Greg, so we could make a cool little video. And so it's so funny seeing the kids like run around, getting so excited, holding the GoPro wherever they go, and going into the shops, and they themselves asking the shop owners, where's the cardboard box? Remember, these guys are gamers, so you know they would otherwise be zoning out or doing this, but we've got them out and about using the digital tools to sort of teach them about real life. Next slide. And making trailers like this. Very silly. Next slide. On top of that, we give them vast range of experiences, particularly use of different digital tools. We didn't ask them to make these, by the way. They themselves feel so identified with the egg that they are out there to help promote the Egg Academy. And we didn't ask them to, we didn't pay them to. We're just giving them lessons and teaching them the tools to be able to use these things. And they go out and make things like this, which is really cool, I think. Next slide. And so we get out about, we give them these experiences, both real life, but you know, our main thing is to sort of focus our energy on the digital. Next slide. And it's so wonderful to see that they would sort of take their time out of their weekend. This was a weekend. They came on Saturday and Sunday, all day, to do work on a video game. Right? They took their time out to do work, which I mean, we think is like groundbreaking, and we really think that we're onto it. But we're very small yet. So yeah, next slide. Some of the work they've created. Next slide. And I guess this sort of really hit me just a couple of days ago. We decided to package, this is Tiari, and we decided to package his work because he's like what we would call like an AA++ student. He's like well beyond the bell curve of what he can achieve with these digital tools. He's really smart and incredible. And I asked his mum, I wanted to package up some of the student work and send it to a teacher at his school. And I said, can I please do that? And she said, that would be lovely, that'd be excellent. His teachers don't quite see him, which was like, what? You know, but understandably, like teachers are real busy, they can't see all, and especially behind the screen, you know. Next slide. And the sort of irony of it all was that same day, he's in the middle of class, you know, we're talking 12:20 in the afternoon, just after lunch, and he sends us into the server, our online server, a picture of a doodle that he's making called Nelk. I drew Nelk at school today. He's disengaging from class, yet he's sharing us his doodles into our server. And so, I don't know, just that kind of experience just sums it up for us, you know. It really encapsulates the sort of community that we're building for them. It's not his best work. Yeah, so we're building these experiences. We're going to try and build them digitally, which is going to be really interesting to build their confidence up, you know, get them creating, not just consuming, creating, not just consuming, and building their confidence up so that real life doesn't seem so scary to them anymore. Next slide. And so that they can enjoy life. They can see the world, they can travel it, they can get out there and make it better. I want to finish with one more thing, one last story. It's called the old sage, The Boy and the River. And so This is way before computers. And the old sage took the boy to the side of took the boy for a walk, and they came across this sort of clearing, lots of rocks. There was lots of rocks, and the sage had a little chest. Didn't show the kid what's inside it, but decided to bury it right in the middle of the rocks. So buried it, put it away, and he said to the boy, if you ever need something, if you're ever in trouble, come and find this spot and dig up this treasure. And 30 years went past, and the town had grown, but they were under siege from a village that was nearby. And it was getting quite bad, like they were going to get wiped out. And this boy had now turned into the warrior of this village, and so he had to save it somehow. And so he knew he had to go back to find his chest. So he went back to the clearing, but what had happened was, to his, there was a massive river running right through the middle of the area. He knew exactly where it was, but the river was covering it, and rapids were rushing. And so he got angry. He was, get me in there, let me try and get there, and sort of swam, but the river was too powerful and knocked him back. He tried a few times, but couldn't quite get there. And so he sat down by the side of the river, sort of crying and not sure what to do. And eventually it finally hit him what he could try and do. And so rather than try and fight the river head on, he decided to go upstream and looked for somewhere where the river had sort of changed its path slightly, and there was a little trickle that, the rapids were here, but there was a little trickle coming off down here, and he was like, oh, maybe if I could just make that slightly bigger, make it slightly bigger. And so he started digging, and this sort of offshoot of the river started growing and growing, and he kept going and he kept going until the whole river, all the water started to direct towards this other direction, all the way to the point where he could then reach the treasure, because the water had been redirected. And he dug it up, and it opened the chest, and inside was a statue. And it was a statue of two warriors, savage, scars and all, and they were hugging. And so it was a symbol of unity, something that's sorely lacking in the world today. And the Egg Academy is like that boy. It's like the boy that's gone up the river, rather than fighting the rapids, rather than fighting the education system head on. We've gone and found a little trickle that parents are willing to pay directly for an after-school program, and so the trickle is just beginning. And so we're looking for more sort of water from the main flow to join this little trickle to see how far we could, redirect the path, to sort of realign the education system with what's important, to get young people passionate about what they do, to get them excited about the future, to get them off their device and back into the real world. And so, next slide. We need your help. We need to find more digitally inclined 11 to 15-year-olds. We know how to do it, so we just need a few more, and we want people that want to create. Young, digitally inclined people spend too much time on the device, not sure what they want. If you can help us find some, that we would love that. Also, if you want to see what these young people are capable of and watch our journey, we make a lot of content, and I write little blogs to sort of share what we're learning by letting these kids, giving them the space to operate into the digital space. So if you want to drop your email to follow the journey, that would be great. That's all from me. Thank you. Sorry?
Questions?
Yeah. I'm happy to take questions. Do you want?
Yes. Any questions? And those who are going to ask questions, please give their name first.
While we do that, I just want to apologise. They've lost the remote. The last person who used it was Bishop Peter Carroll.
Questions. Digital tech, what do we do? Why are the young people addicted? Slot machines, what's it like to work at a video game company?
My name's Jeanette Weber. I have 2 grandsons, very digitally compromised. How much is it to join?
So the program we're operating on is 25 a week, which what they get is a weekly workshop that it's interactive, so normally it's about 6 kids, and then they get to join the community. And the community is a big part of it for the young person because they feel a part of this bigger mission, right? That they're going to be creators.
Thank you. Margaret Austin, this is most exciting. What I would like to know is to what extent you have identified the skills which the young people are developing, the actual skills which are part of the initiation into the areas of knowledge that cannot be left to chance. Because what you're looking at is the present and the future. And as far as I can see at the present time, one of the impediments to advancing educational activity, and I dare to say it, the impediment is parents who expect education to be like what they got, when in fact the future is so different.
That's a great statement, and sort of it touches us strongly in the sense that we can't, for one, we can't convince everyone. We have to find the parents that are already open to it. That's one thing. And I mean, but in terms of the skills, we think if we can show that the kid is happy and the parent can see that, and also the goal is to get them to remote working, is to get them the skills to be able to earn the money so that they can go off on their trip. And if we have that evidence that, this testimonial and this thing, like, we got this kid to get the job, I think that would be proof of a system that is actually a step up from what is currently there, which is finish your school, not sure what to do, go to uni, get your sort of like fees free, get your time to figure it out, go binge drinking, all that, and sort of. No, I don't think so. I think we can get there with the digital skills. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I guess up to a point, it would be wonderful if this concept could become the norm within the school.
Absolutely would love to. There's a lot of, with what we're doing, there's a lot of, it's sort of, we're heading into the territory that no school wants to go into. For one, no school likes to interact with their students online too much. They won't, there's certain barriers that they have to protect themselves, so to say. And so it becomes, and teachers are real busy, so they're not willing to like put themselves at risk in principle. It's very hard to sort of change it from the inside. Whereas we're different in the sense that our online community is on 24/7. So kids can message us at any time. There's no, and so it's things like that which teachers would be like, well, we can't do that. And I guess things might change over time, but now I don't think we can go direct to parents, and it works quite well that way, I think.
Could I ask you, Christine Bridgman, how many lessons would a child need to take?
How many?
Yes.
How many lessons?
Yes, if you're charging $25 a week.
To be honest, I haven't really thought about that, in the sense that we'd love to keep them around for as long as possible. Equity is a really important thing, and we think about that quite a bit and how to solve that problem. One option in the sort of early days would to have people sponsor students to stay in the academy, which would cost something like $1,200 to $1,500 a year. You also have device issues, so we need a computer that's good enough, so that's another sort of $2,000 problem. But we do think about that a lot, and the hope is that as we create a lot of this content, because what's happening is that these kids are creators now, which means they create a lot of online content for the Egg Academy, for themselves, but it's all this bundle. And so we package it, right? We make videos, and you guys can see them if you check out the website. And because of the story, because we're working with kids, there's a lot of sort of doors that open up to us, and because it's sort of this good mission, we think that we can really get these kids creating digital products that then sell, and a part of the sale we want to distribute back to our sponsorship pool. I think there's a lot of potential for that because of how things scale online, that we might just find the right thing, maybe not now, maybe not in 3 years, but we might find one thing that really suddenly makes a lot of revenue that can then distribute funds back to people that can't afford it.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Guy Crozier. I was just going to comment on the fact that at the YMCA in Christchurch, they have a room there that's fitted out with 3D printers and all sorts of other things that I don't understand. And a lot of kids are going in there and doing some incredibly creative things. It leads me on to another point, and that is, it's good to see you're developing their minds and their creative skills and so on. Is there a chance to fit in physical recreation, not necessarily sport, not every kid likes sport, but kids need a bit of cardiovascular exercise and rather than just sitting around all the time. Are you able to fit anything of that nature into your program?
We look holistically at people, and we want them to live a good life, because that's the whole point of it. So I think we can solve that problem. It's a little tricky, just because we're going to be digital. So how do we get a kid to then do activity outside? And I think there are two kind of ways that, again, down the line, it's around. There's two ways. One is that we facilitate groups, gatherings of young people. And so rather than me and Juniper have to do everything as staff, it's that students incubate their own gatherings and parents sort of help out, and sort of it's sort of community-led. Yeah. The other thing is, could we use technology like a say a watch that measures how many steps you do, and sort of get everyone to compete for that? So, yeah, I totally agree. I want people to get outside more, and I think it's really needed. Let's not get them on the device all the time. Yeah.
Jocelyn Humphreys. My question has to do with soft skills, which I think are equally important as part of the scalable side of things. Can you comment on how the children are interacting with their soft skills?
Yeah, we have, that's a really good point. We have 4 key areas of curriculum, like software, media, business, like entrepreneurial, and soft skills communication. Really important. And you're right, like it's really important for the workplace and stuff like that. And so it is why we run our community. It's a very big part of it. We run a lot of social gatherings and events to stimulate the social aspects of the education. I remember playing video games when I was younger, and yes, I was really socially anxious in the real world, but did a lot of communication in the virtual world with my friends online, and those skills do translate. They came out, the other end. So playing games and talking with your friends online do eventually translate to communication practice outside. I hope.
Hi, I'm Peter Gordon, and I've got the joyful task of thanking you today.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for your insights, particularly in the early stage there, and your frank story of your own life, which I thought was really interesting and well presented, despite the ums. I'm pretty good at ums and ahs myself, actually. Just did it then. What have I got here? Oh, yes. You made me think of yesterday when the Auckland kids had all those devices and created all sorts of problems by saying there'd been some deaths. Are you familiar with that? What happened in Auckland yesterday? There was lockdown in 5 schools.
Oh, what happened?
Didn't know about that.
I don't know.
Yeah. And what happened was this is your talk, not mine, but
Go on.
a couple of kids put on Facebook that there'd been 2 deaths, and apparently it wasn't true at all. But all the kids believed it because it was went round and round in circles. Right. So there is a major problem with devices. The other thing I thought that needs to be commented on is that teachers are actually working, thanks to lockdown, with devices in the teaching program. So, it's part of the world. Anyway, thank you very much again.
Yeah.